From businessman Naguib Sawiris to foreign correspondent Richard Engel, we now turn to politics with Dr. Abdulla of Afghanistan. He is head of Afghanistan's main opposition group, the Coalition for Hope and Change. In 2009, he ran against President Karzai in the presidential elections. Prior to that, he served for 5 years as foreign minister. This is part of our continuing series about Afghanistan and America's war there. I'm pleased to have Dr. Abdulla back on this broadcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie.
Tell me how you see Afghanistan today.
In terms of Karzai government in itself, it has turned into a problem rather than being part of a solution. That's, I think, the main challenge for the people of Afghanistan, as well as friends of Afghanistan, the international community, the United States. And it is now the Karzai government is part of the problems. In terms of the transition and transition of security responsibilities to the Afghan side, again, because of the failures of the current government, I think it will be difficult to envisage that the transition will going to take place timely. Negotiations with the Taliban and reconciliation or reintegration, that in itself has not been defined by anybody. And as a result, everybody is talking about reconciliation and reintegration, and nobody has worked out how it works in real term in a situation where Taliban are thinking of bringing the state down in the state institutions rather than getting ready to be accommodated. And their sanctuaries are still very active outside Afghanistan.
So your recommendation to the United States would be what?
I would say that rather than jumping into the idea of reconciling with the Taliban and giving up on the idea of helping Afghanistan to establish a democratic system or a functioning government, trying to stand by the process and also to regain the trust of the people of Afghanistan, because in today's situation, the lack of trust between the people and the government of Afghanistan, between the government of Afghanistan and the international community and the people of Afghanistan, has created a confusing situation that the enemies of all of us, the enemies of the people of Afghanistan as well as the international community, are capitalizing on this, and Taliban are gaining strength as a result of that. So the United States should revisit some of its policies. So to the people of Afghanistan, it is proved that the support is not for just one person or one group of people, but rather for the people of Afghanistan. In today's situation, the people are thinking, the Afghans are thinking that whatever happens, the United States will be supportive of Mr. Karzai and its government at the peril of the people of Afghanistan. So I don't say that this is, I'm not saying that this is the actual case, but this is the perception of the people of Afghanistan. And that needs to be changed.
So the dilemma for the United States is, and the NATO countries, is that essentially they have targeted 2014, and at which time Afghan governance will reach a point where they can withdraw, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's their target.
That's their target. Hamid Karzai will be president until 2014. And he's going to be the man responsible for the government. So it's a huge dilemma, is it not?
That's right. He will be the president until 2014. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure that he will make attempts in order to stay beyond 2014. According to the Constitution of Afghanistan, he can't do that, but he might resort to creating emergency situation or resorting to emergency provisions in the Constitution. But at the same time, his failure to deliver to the people of Afghanistan, to bring good governance, to fight against corruption, that has made the prospect of the transition even more difficult and more difficult as we move on. And also the fact that he's putting all the blame against the international community, the United States, and he is inciting the people and provoking the people against the international community. Like recently, there were a few examples, including what happened in recent demonstrations. So that's also in another sense taking the enemies in place of friends and friends in place of the enemies. For him, the enemy number one is the international community. Number two is the loyal opposition. And Taliban, he calls the Taliban as his brothers. So when the leader of a country loses sense of direction, a complicated situation is what you get.
Listen to this. This is from Dexter Filkins reporting on the administration's response to the Kabul bank scandal. He said, quote, after months of sparring with Karzai, the U.S. administration appears to be paralyzed. We have to work with these people, a senior NATO officer told me. We have no choice but to work with a man you say is corrupt and has no capacity to win the support of the Afghan people.
Of course, this situation is also a man-made situation, ignoring the widespread fraud in the 2009 elections, and also failing to prevent massive fraud before the elections were taking place. That in itself is a reason for getting stuck with today's situation.
What should the United States do about President Karzai?
Stand firm when it comes to the issues of governance, good governance, supporting democratic process, bring coherence in the policies of the international community, rather than flip-flopping on these issues, giving the right message, a coherent message, a consistent message to the people of Afghanistan, because sometimes the policies are perceived in the eyes of the people of Afghanistan appeasement. Sometimes it's there are tensions between both sides. If there is a consistency in dealing with this government in its policies by the United States, the government of Afghanistan, President Karzai, will get the right message. If there are inconsistencies and incoherence, then of course he will make use of it and utilize those gaps and then continue with the mess.
You have just suggested that the problem is with the United States and it's not sending a consistent message.
Yes, not all the times, but frequently we have been witness to this.
General Petraeus seems to believe that what he has to do is get the Taliban on the defensive.
The continuation of military pressure is needed. At the same time, to think that because of military pressure, Taliban will turn to negotiating table, this is a little bit unrealistic, I should say. Taliban, the core Taliban groups, will continue fighting as long as they have sanctuaries outside Afghanistan. And of course, their agenda in Talibanization does not does not call for them to be part of a negotiated settlement. If they kill innocent people, they think that they go to paradise. If they are being killed, the same. So they should be understood.
This is Thomas Pickering, the former Deputy Secretary of State. He and Mr. Brahimi were heading a commission that looked at the Afghan possibility. And here is what Mr. Pickering said on this program.
I think that we didn't come to your table to say that Taliban are simply splendid, let's put them in power.
I know you didn't know that.
We came to your table, Charlie, to say, look, there are pressures on the Taliban that are building up. War weariness, people who don't like their strict moral code. There are things that the Taliban have begun to move on. They're not eliminating all women's schools, that kind of thing. There's an opening here. When you're in a stalemate or when you're in a deep hole, it may be time to stop digging.
When you hear Tom Pickering say that, do you agree with him or do you think he's uninformed?
I think he needs, Under Secretary Pickering needs to be better informed. While I accept the logic might apply to other situations, but not to the Taliban. The idea of Taliban changing their policies on women, on education, that's absolutely out of question when it comes to the Taliban in the Taliban leadership. They have not said it. They haven't done anything to prove that that's the right conclusion. I would say that as far as Ambassador Brahimi and Thomas Pickering's analysis and work is concerned, I've seen the report and I've seen the summary of that report. It doesn't suggest any fundamental solution for the problem. It doesn't define the policy of reconciliation, but it's based on assumptions, which in most cases do not match the realities of Afghanistan. And my concern is that by everybody talking about reconciliation and reintegration without looking at it thoroughly in a fundamental manner, we are creating a situation that this is like the lie circling around, and then that becomes a truth, or in the eyes of the people becomes the truth. No, I don't agree with that report, with that conclusion, and it's, I think, a sort of remote judgment of a situation which is totally different when you look at it on the ground.
Do you imagine any circumstances that can get the Pakistani government to do something about eliminating a safe haven for the Taliban in Pakistan?
Still, it seems to me that they are a bit further away from making that decision. A sort of decision which Pakistan needs to make, not just for the interest of Afghanistan or the international community, but for its own interest, based on the lessons of the past few years. In the simple lesson would be that the stronger Afghani Taliban, the stronger will be Pakistani Taliban. And they are fighting against Pakistani Taliban. And you cannot differentiate between groups which have fought together, which are dying together, which are killing together. And the basis, the core of their ideology is the same, the agenda is the same, source of support and income and linkages of the with the international terrorism are the same. They cannot make that distinction between the two groups, but unfortunately they continue to do so.
Do you think the level of drone strikes by the U.S. military is necessary and productive?
In most cases, and majority of cases, I would say yes, that eliminating leadership of the Al-Qaeda and Taliban through drone strikes or disrupting their command and control structure in a serious manner, it is necessary, and I think that on that basis, whether publicly our friends in Pakistan agree with this policy or not, but I'm sure there is an agreement on that. So if it is not sufficient, that's a different issue, but it has eliminated some of the most dangerous threats to peace and stability, and especially in that region.
Do you believe that most of the American forces will be able to leave by 2014?
I have no doubt that there will be a reduction in number of the American troops by 2014. Whether it will be very significant reduction or not, that remains to be seen. And if the failures in Afghanistan continues, if the situation in Pakistan continues as it is, how is it that we can achieve that goal without jeopardizing the sacrifices, the achievements which are there because of the sacrifices of the Afghan people as well as the American troops, men and women? It seems to me very difficult to envisage that.
Dr. Abdulla, thank you so much, former Foreign Minister of Afghanistan, Chairman of Coalition for Hope and Change. A pleasure to have you on the broadcast.
You're welcome.